The Offering is a story about the conflict between ideals and practicality. Anand, a wealthy and intelligent student, is pragmatic and self-centered, while Vishambhar, a poor and struggling young man, is dedicated to his ideals. The story takes a turn when Vishambhar joins the Swarajya movement, jeopardizing his exams and scholarship. Despite Anand's attempts to dissuade him, Vishambhar remains steadfast in his commitment. Rupmani, a woman acquainted with both, is deeply moved by Vishambhar's courage and sacrifice. In the end, Vishambhar is imprisoned for his involvement in the movement, and Rupmani's respect for him grows, while Anand remains isolated in his practical outlook.
The Offering. Sitting on a cushioned chair, Anand lit a cigar and said, "Today, Vishambhar has done something really reckless. The exams are near, and yet he has decided to become a volunteer today. If he gets caught, he'll have to forget about the exams. I even think he might lose his scholarship." Rupmani, sitting on a bench across from him, was reading a newspaper. Her eyes were on the paper, but her ears were tuned to Anand. She said, "That's unfortunate. Didn't you try to explain it to him?" Anand made a face and said, "When someone starts considering themselves as the next Gandhi, explaining anything to them becomes difficult. Instead, he tries to explain things to me." Rupmani folded the newspaper and, adjusting her hair, said, "You didn't even tell me, maybe I could have stopped him." Anand, a bit irritated, said, "What's the big deal? He's probably still at the Congress office. Go and stop him." Both Anand and Vishambhar were university students. Anand was blessed with both wealth and knowledge, while Vishambhar was dealt a poor hand in life. Out of pity, the professors had awarded Vishambhar a small scholarship, which was his only means of survival. Rupmani, too, had been their peer until a year ago, but she had to leave college due to ill health. Both young men would visit her occasionally. Anand would come to win her heart, while Vishambhar would visit when he felt restless or unable to concentrate on his studies. Perhaps sharing his troubles with her brought him some peace. In front of Anand, however, Vishambhar couldn't muster the courage to speak. Anand never showed him any sympathy. Instead, he would scold, humiliate, and mock him. Vishambhar lacked the strength to argue with Anand. He was like a candle in front of the sun. Anand had a mental dominance over him. For the first time in his life, Vishambhar had refused to submit to that dominance, and Anand had come to Rupmani to complain about it. For months, Vishambhar had tried to align his inner desires with Anand's logic, but even after being defeated by reason, his heart continued to rebel. Certainly, this decision would ruin his academic year. It might even end his student life altogether, rendering 14 to 15 years of hard work futile. He would neither achieve divine grace nor earthly fulfillment. What was the point of jumping into the fire? Even within the university, he could still contribute to the cause. Anand would regularly collect donations and persuade other students to take a vow of Swadeshi, self-reliance. Anand had given the same advice to Vishambhar. This reasoning had convinced Vishambhar's mind, but not his heart. When Anand went to college today, Vishambhar headed to the Swarajya Bhavan, the local Congress office. When Anand returned from college, he found a letter from Vishambhar on his desk. It read, "Dear Anand, I know what I am about to do is not in my best interest, but there is some unknown force pulling me towards it. I don't want to go, yet I am going, just as a person doesn't want to die but does, doesn't want to cry but does. When all the people we revere have already risked their lives, there is no other path left for me. I can no longer deceive my conscience. It's a matter of honor, and honor cannot make any compromises. Yours, Vishambhar." After reading the letter, Anand felt like convincing Vishambhar to return, but his audacity made him angry, and in that fury, he went straight to Rupmani. If Rupmani had pleaded with him to go and bring Vishambhar back, he might have gone, but her statement that she could have stopped him was unbearable for him. His response was filled with anger, roughness, and perhaps some jealousy. Rupmani looked at him with pride and said, "Fine, I'll go." A moment later, she asked hesitantly, "Why won't you go?" Another mistake. If Rupmani had pleaded with him, Anand would have surely accompanied her, but her question already implied that Anand didn't want to go. The proud Anand couldn't go under such circumstances. He said indifferently, "My going would be useless. Your words will have more impact." He left this letter on my desk. When someone is thinking big thoughts about soul, duty, and ideals and considers himself a high-minded person, my words will have no effect. He took the letter out of his pocket and placed it in front of Rukmani. The implications and sarcasm in his words made Rukmani unable to look at him for a moment. Anand's cruel words had hurt her deeply, but in an instant, a spark of rebellion ignited within her. She took the letter with a sense of independence, intending only to respond to Anand's words, but as she read it, her face hardened, her neck stiffened, and her eyes filled with a red glow of sacrifice. She placed the letter back on the table and said, "No, now even my going would be in vain." Anand, swelling with pride at his victory, said, "I told you already, there's a demon riding on his head right now. No one can reason with him. When he spends a year in jail grinding flour, catches tuberculosis, or gets his head and limbs broken by police batons, his mind will come back to reality. Right now, he's probably dreaming of applause and cheers." Rukmani was gazing at the sky outside. In the blue sky, she saw a silhouette, a weak, emaciated, naked figure, wearing a dhoti up to his knees, with a shiny bald head and a toothless mouth, the living embodiment of penance, sacrifice, and truth. Anand continued, "If I knew that my blood could save the country, I would be ready to give it today. But what will happen if 100 or so people like me come forward? Apart from sacrificing lives, there's no visible benefit." Rukmani was still gazing at the same silhouette. That figure was smiling, a simple, charming smile that had conquered the world. Anand spoke again, "The gentlemen who are haunted by the ghost of exams now want to save the country. Ask them, you can't even save yourselves, so how will you save the country? Compared to failing exams, getting beaten by the police is still less painful." Rukmani's eyes were still fixed on the sky. The silhouette had turned stern. Anand suddenly said, "Yes, there's a very interesting film today. Are you coming? We'll be back after the first show." Rukmani, as if descending from the sky, said, "No, I don't feel like it." Anand gently held her hand and asked, "Are you feeling okay?" Rukmani didn't try to pull her hand away. She replied, "Yes, what could be wrong? Then why won't you come?" "I just don't feel like it today." "Then I won't go either." "Very well, donate the ticket money to the Congress. That's a tough condition, but I accept. Show me the receipt tomorrow." "Don't you trust me?" Anand left for the hostel. A little later, Rukmani headed towards the Swarajya Bhavan. When Rukmani arrived at Swarajya Bhavan, a group of volunteers was preparing to picket British cloth shops. Vishambhar was not among them. Another group was ready to go to liquor shops. Vishambhar was not in this group either. Rukmani approached the secretary and asked, "Can you tell me where Vishambhar Nath is?" The secretary asked, "The one who joined today?" "Yes, that's him. He's a brave man. He's taken up the task of mobilizing the villages. He must have reached the station by now. He's taking the 7 o'clock train. So, he's probably still at the station?" The secretary checked his watch and replied, "Yes, he should still be there." Rukmani hurried outside and pedaled her bicycle quickly. When she reached the station, she saw Vishambhar standing on the platform. As soon as he saw her, he rushed towards her and said, "How did you come here? Did you meet Anand today?" Rukmani looked him up and down and said, "What kind of appearance is this? Is wearing shoes also considered treason?" Vishambhar hesitantly asked, "Did Anand say anything to you?" Rukmani, with a stern tone, said, "Yes, he did." "What were you thinking? You won't be back for less than 2 years." Vishambhar's face fell. He said, "If you know this, don't you have a few words of encouragement for me?" Rukmani's heart ached, but she couldn't abandon her outward indifference. She replied, "Do you consider me an enemy or a friend?" Vishambhar, with tears in his eyes, said, "Why do you ask such a question, Rukmani? Even without hearing it from my mouth, don't you already know the answer?" Rukmani said, "Then I'm telling you, don't go." Vishambhar said, "This is not the advice of a friend, Rukmani. I'm sure you're not saying this from your heart. What value do my life and ambitions have? Even after completing my MA, I'll get a job worth maybe 100 rupees a month. At best, I might rise to 300 or 400 rupees. Do you know what I'll gain here instead? The complete independence of our country. Dying for such a great cause is far better than living that life. Now go, the train is coming. Tell Anand not to be angry with me. Rukmani had always felt pity for this simple-minded young man. At this moment, he became an object of her reverence. The power of sacrifice pulled her with such force that the differences in circumstances seemed to disappear. The flaws in Vishambhar became ornaments, shining brightly. She began to find solace in his vast heart, like a bird searching for shelter. Rukmani, with yearning eyes, said, "Take me with you." Vishambhar felt like he was in a daze. "Take you? Anand won't spare me alive. I'm not Anand's slave." "But Anand is your slave?" Rukmani looked at him with rebellious eyes but said nothing. At that moment, the circumstances felt like obstacles to her. Why shouldn't she be as free as Vishambhar? The only child of wealthy parents, raised in luxury, she now felt like a prisoner. Her soul began to rebel against those bonds. The train arrived. Passengers began boarding and disembarking. With teary eyes, Rukmani asked, "Won't you take me with you?" Vishambhar firmly said, "No." "Why?" "I don't want to answer that. Do you think I'm so attached to comfort that I can't live in a village?" Vishambhar was ashamed. That was also a big reason, but he denied it, saying, "No, that's not it." "Then what is it? Are you afraid that my father will disown me? Even if that fear exists, isn't it worth considering?" "I don't care about that at all." Vishambhar saw the proud resolve on Rukmani's moon-like face. He seemed to tremble before that resolve. He said, "Please grant me this favor, Rukmani, I beg you." Rukmani thought deeply. Vishambhar said again, "For my sake, you'll have to give up this idea." Rukmani, bowing her head, said, "If that's your command, then I'll obey, Vishambhar. You think I'm acting on a momentary impulse and about to ruin my future. I'll show you that this is not a momentary impulse but a firm resolve. Go, but promise me that you'll only fall into the hands of the law when your self-respect or principles are at stake. I'll keep praying to God for you." The train whistled. Vishambhar sat inside. The train departed, and Rukmani stood there as if holding the wealth of the world in her arms. Rukmani had an old, worn-out photo of Vishambhar lying in a corner of her cupboard. After returning from the station, she took it out and placed it in a velvet frame on her desk. Anand's photo was removed. Vishambhar had written her a few letters during the holidays. Rukmani had read them and tossed them aside. Today, she took out those letters and read them again. Today, those letters seemed so full of life. She carefully placed them in her writing box. The next day, the newspaper arrived, and Rukmani eagerly grabbed it. When she saw Vishambhar's name, she swelled with pride. Visiting Swarajya Bhavan once a day became her routine. She regularly attended meetings and gradually gave up all her luxuries. Silk saris were replaced with khadi saris. She even got a spinning wheel and spent hours spinning yarn. Her yarn became finer and finer by the day. She planned to make Vishambhare's kurta out of it. During this time, Anand was busy preparing for exams. He barely had time to lift his head. He visited Rukmani once or twice, but he didn't stay long. Perhaps Rukmani's aloofness didn't allow him to stay longer. A month passed. One evening, Anand visited. Rukmani was ready to go to Swarajya Bhavan. Anand frowned and said, "It's hard to talk to you these days." Rukmani sat down on a chair and said, "You don't have time to take a break from your books either. Did you get any fresh news today?" "I keep up with the daily updates at Swarajya Bhavan." Anand, with philosophical indifference, said, "I heard Vishambhar has been making a lot of noise in the villages. He found the right job for himself. He was quiet here, but he must be roaring among the villages, but the man is brave." Rukmani looked at him with eyes that said, "This is none of your business," and replied, "If someone has this quality, all their flaws are forgiven. You probably don't have time to read the Congress bulletin. Vishambhar has stirred up so much awareness in the villages that not a single thread of foreign cloth is sold, and no one goes to the liquor shops. And the best part is, there's no need for picketing. Now, they're even setting up village councils." Anand, with a dismissive attitude, said, "Well, then you can assume his time is up." Rukmani, with fervor, said, "Doing all this and leaving is not cheap. Yesterday, there was supposed to be a big gathering of farmers. People from the entire region must have gathered. I heard that there haven't been any cases from the villages lately. Lawyers are worried. Anand bitterly said, that's the joy of Swarajya. Landlords, lawyers, and merchants all perish. Only laborers and farmers remain. Rukmani realized that Anand was determined to argue today. She, too, prepared herself for the battle and said, so, you want landlords, lawyers, and merchants to keep growing fat by sucking the blood of the poor, and no one should even dare to speak against such a great injustice? You are a scholar of sociology. Can such a system be called ideal in any sense? In such a situation, can the three main principles of civilization be practiced in even the smallest measure? Anand, heatedly, said, the dominance of education and wealth has always existed and will always exist. Its form may change, but it will remain. Rukmani, with passion, said, if the same dominance of wealth remains even after Swarajya, and the educated society continues to be selfish, then I'll say it's better not to have Swarajya at all. It's the greed of English moneylenders and the self-interest of the educated that is crushing us today. Are we fighting with our lives on the line just to replace foreign evils with domestic ones? At least, for me, Swarajya doesn't mean replacing John with Govind. I want to see a society where at least inequality isn't given shelter. Anand said, that's your personal fantasy. Rukmani replied, you haven't even read the literature of this movement. Anand said, I haven't read it, and I don't want to. Rukmani responded, the nation won't suffer much from that. Anand said, you're not the same person anymore. It's like you've completely changed. Suddenly, the postman brought the Congress bulletin and placed it on the table. Rukmani impatiently opened it. As soon as her eyes fell on the headline, a wave of exhilaration washed over her. Unconsciously, her neck stiffened, and her face glowed with an otherworldly radiance. She stood up in a rush and said, Vishambhar has been arrested and sentenced to 2 years in prison. Anand, dispassionately, asked, what was the sentence for? Rukmani, looking at Vishambhar's photo with pride, said, there was a huge farmers' gathering in Raniganj. He was arrested there. Anand said, I told you before, he'd be gone for 2 years. He's ruined his life. Rukmani retorted, does getting a degree alone make one's life successful? Is all knowledge and experience confined to books? I believe the experience of life and human character that Vishambhar will gain in 2 years, you won't acquire even in 200 years of studying philosophy and law. If the purpose of education is character building, then the means of building mental strength in the national struggle are far superior to those in the struggle for livelihood. If you say that for us, worrying about our stomachs is enough, that we can't do anything else, that we lack the courage, strength, patience, and organization, then I'll agree. But I won't tolerate belittling those who are willing to give their lives for the nation. Today, millions of people will stand ready to face the challenges at Vishambhar's command. Do you have the courage to stand before the public? You are killing yourself over degrees to serve the very people who have trampled you underfoot, who consider you lower than dogs. You may take pride in that, but I don't. Anand, taken aback, said, you've become a staunch revolutionary now. Rukmani, still passionate, said, if you smell revolution in the truth, it's not my fault. Today, there will surely be a gathering to congratulate Vishambhar. Will you go? Rukmani, with determination, said, of course, I'll go, I'll speak to, and tomorrow I'll go to Raniganj as well. The lamp that Vishambhar has lit will not be extinguished as long as I live. Anand, grasping at straws like a drowning man, said, have you consulted your mother and grandfather? I will. And will they allow you to go? In matters of principle, one's conscience is the ultimate authority. Well, that's something new to learn. Saying this, Anand stood up and left the room without shaking hands. His steps were so unsteady that it seemed he would fall at any moment.
This story was originally written by Premchand, a legendary author of Hindi literature almost 100 years ago. Do let us know if you like the story. If it so happens that you did not like the story, even then, please let us know your choice so that we can find something you would like to listen. If you like the story, tell your friends as well. If you want to enjoy more stories like these from so many other Indian authors, subscribing the channel would make it easy. Bye for now.